The little boy just wanted to finish the yogurt his dad hadn't finished, but before he could take a bite, his father snatched it away and snapped at him, warning him never to touch anything he'd eaten again. The boy looked hurt and confused. What he didn't know was his dad was just trying to protect him. After breakfast, John dropped his son off at preschool, then headed straight to the adoption agency. Today, he was hoping to find new parents for his son. The staff were shocked. They couldn't understand why any father would do such a thing, but then John explained.
I don't want him to think about it, to understand death.
John had recently been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Doctors told him he had less than 3 months left, and he had no idea how his 3-year-old son would survive on his own after he was gone. Hearing this, the staff's cold expressions softened. John filled out the paperwork, and all he could do was wait for the agency to find a family that could take his place. Until then, he just wanted to spend as much time with his son as he could. As a single father, John always felt like he'd failed his son. Other kids had rooms full of toys, but when he looked at his own child, all he felt was guilt. Soon, the agency contacted him with news. They'd found a potential family. They lived on a luxurious estate, and the couple seemed warm and kind. They spoke sincerely about how much they already liked his son, promising to send him to the best schools and give him the best life money could buy. John thought maybe this could work, but then he learned something that changed his mind. The couple already had a child of their own. Even though the husband promised to love John's son just as much, John couldn't shake the fear. Would his son really be treated the same? Would he feel left out? The risk was too big. John couldn't gamble his son's future. Later, John gently asked his son, Mike, how would you feel about living with a new family? But Mike just said,
I like home.
John's heart ached. Of course he wished things could stay this way forever, but he knew that wasn't possible. One morning, on the way to preschool, Mike asked why all the other kids had moms, but he didn't. Looking into his son's innocent face, John felt like 1,000 needles pierced his heart. He wanted to explain that his mother had left, that she wasn't coming back, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. So he told Mike, she went somewhere far away. It'll be a long time before she comes back. John truly loved his son, even while battling illness. He still read him bedtime stories in the quiet of the night, still took walks with him through the park on sunny afternoons. The way Mike's eyes lit up when John talked about excavators, that became John's most treasured memory. He just wanted to be there a little longer, give his son more happy days, even if his own days were numbered. 3-year-old Mike was incredibly thoughtful for his age. When he saw his dad sleeping on the cold couch, he would quietly lay his little blanket over him. When John woke up, Mike would bring him a cup of warm water without saying a word, then sit beside him in silence. But fate kept reminding John that time was running out. A sudden, piercing headache told him he needed to act fast. The next family the agency introduced was a middle-class couple. They were well-dressed, with kind smiles. They explained that they didn't plan on having kids of their own, but deeply wished for the chance to become parents. While they talked, Mike became fascinated with a stuffed bunny on the table. The man quickly offered to let him keep it. That small, thoughtful gesture meant everything to John. Maybe this was the right family. But as they were leaving, John caught the wife giving her husband a subtle signal, telling him to take the toy back. In that moment, John's heart sank. He realized the kindness they showed was just for show. Beneath the surface lay selfishness and indifference. He walked away, more determined than ever. He would never give his son to people like that. On the way home, Mike suddenly asked, Daddy, what does adoption mean? John paused. He looked into his son's face and said, it means, if your daddy isn't good enough, he'll try to find you a new home where you can be happy. But Mike didn't respond. He just wandered off, carefully walking along the white lines on the ground, as if trying to stay balanced in his own little world. Maybe that was his way of hiding the sadness he couldn't yet express. John's eyes filled with tears. The guilt in his heart was overwhelming. The next day, John, sick and weak, tried walking the same straight line. Just like Mike, he wanted to understand what his son was feeling, but his body, now ravaged by illness, couldn't even keep its balance. He knew he was running out of time. Soon after, the agency introduced a third family. They had many children, both biological and adopted. They promised to treat every child equally, but during their conversation, John could sense that Mike didn't feel comfortable there. This time, he chose to follow his son's instinct and turned them down. John was running out of options. More than that, he was running out of time, but he still didn't know how to tell Mike the truth. How do you explain death to a 3-year-old? How could he possibly understand something so heavy? One day, Mike pointed at a beetle lying motionless on the ground. Why isn't it moving? He asked. John told him, the beetle's soul is gone. What's left is just its shell. He was trying, gently, to help Mike understand what was coming, but Mike still didn't get it. The final family was a woman living alone. She didn't have much, but she seemed to truly like Mike. She brought out a bag of colorful candies and asked Mike to pretend they were rocks and load them into his toy truck. John could tell her financial situation wasn't great, but he didn't care. His own life hadn't been full of riches either. Something about her felt genuine. As they left, he thought he might give it some serious thought, but then on the way home, John saw a boy, maybe in elementary school, walking with his head held high and his steps firm. John's eyes followed him. He watched the boy get into a car, wave goodbye, and drive away. In that moment, John saw their two lives. Mike's like a rising sun, his own like the setting one, fading into the horizon, heading for the end. That day was John's 34th birthday, and also his last. He and Mike made a chocolate cut cake together. John placed 34 red candles on top, one for each year he'd lived. Then Mike brought him one more. John froze. He knew he wouldn't live to see the next birthday, but he also understood what that extra candle meant. It was his son's way of saying he didn't want to say goodbye. John looked at Mike, his eyes full of warmth. He smiled, a smile that carried 1,000 unspoken emotions. That night, while Mike was asleep, John cried quietly by himself. Memories played in his mind like scenes from a movie. Moments of laughter, moments of love, but reality was cruel. He only had 1 month left. There was no more time to wait. With the last bit of hope in his heart, John went to the agency and asked, "Can you help me find Mike's birth mother?" After all, she was still his biological mom. But when the staff finished their investigation, they uncovered a shocking secret, one that could change both John's and Mike's lives forever. Want to know what happened next? Follow me. I'll share the rest of the story soon.